Clearly, our economy is linked and intertwined with many others, especially Europe's. Almost all agree that Europe's failure to adequately address its debt crisis can adversely affect our domestic economy. The President has gone as far as to say, quote, "The biggest headwind the American economy is facing right now is uncertainty in Europe." I respectfully disagree. Given current domestic exposures to European debt, hedging strategies in place, and current account balances, I do not believe Europe's problems are as threatening to us as they once were. The greater threat to our economy is that Europe will successfully confront their debt crisis and we will not successfully confront ours. Although the dollar remains the world's reserve currency, we are beginning to see some chinks in that armor. Although our economy still remains the flight to safety, the question is for how long? Interest rates remain historically low due to the Fed's tripling its balance sheet, but this massive intervention is just masking true market interest rates that are making it easier for the administration to service the debt on the nation's first, second, and third trillion-dollar-plus deficits. Everyone knows our debt is unsustainable, and as economist Herb Stein once famously observed, if something cannot go on forever, it will stop. Beyond the unsustainable debt, the administration has stated that there are some encouraging signs in our economic recovery, and I agree. But after 3 years, there continues to be too many discouraging signs. Unemployment has now exceeded 8% for 37 straight months, the longest span of high unemployment since the Great Depression. When one adds in the people who have simply given up and left the labor force, those who have part-time work yet seek full-time, the true unemployment rate should actually be considered to be 15.2%. According to the World Bank, the ease of starting a business in the U.S. has now fallen from 4th in the world to 13th. According to the Census Bureau, almost half the nation is now classified as either low income or living in poverty. Gas prices have doubled. If this too slow and too weak recovery had achieved the average growth rates of the 10 previous post-war recessions, GDP per person would be $4,528 higher, and 13.7 million more Americans would be working today. The American people know we can do better. And perhaps more importantly, as they see Europe grappling with their debt crisis, they see no evidence that we are confronting our own. Since the President took office, the national debt has increased 45%, from $10.6 trillion to $15.4 trillion debt held by the public. Gross debt, rather. In the budget the administration just released a few weeks ago, they would add another $11 trillion on top of it. And what is most ironic is we convene a hearing that will largely focus on the European debt crisis, is that when you look at the numbers, the U.S. has a worse debt to GDP ratio than does the Eurozone. There is no greater threat to our recovery than our own fiscal trajectory. Unfortunately, the President's approach to Europe appears to be do as I say, but not as I do. Now, the President knows what the cause is. He has said, quote, "The major driver of our long-term debt is Medicare, Medicaid, and our health care spending. Nothing comes close." I agree. But there is nothing in his budget to reform, save, and secure these programs, and I'm not the only one to take note. The Los Angeles Times has editorialized, quote, "It's past time for the administration to lay out a credible plan for bringing the deficit and debt under control. Sadly, Obama's budget proposal shows that he'd rather wait until after the election to have that reckoning." The Boston Herald editorialized, quote, "President Barack Obama has apparently decided that he is not going to be part of the solution to the nation's enormous deficit, which would make him, yes, part of the problem." As we discuss issues facing the Eurozone, I want to make two things exceedingly clear. One, we cannot continue to ignore our own unconscionable and unsustainable debt. Secondly, U.S. taxpayers should not be expected to and cannot afford to bail out foreign countries. I'm encouraged that the administration has stated that it does not plan to seek additional funding for the IMF. But the IMF has announced its intention to further expand its lending activity through bilateral loans. When it does, U.S. taxpayers will be increasingly exposed to greater risk as the U.S. has a 17.5% equity stake in all IMF loan operations. The IMF is venturing into uncharted territory. Never before has it lent money to countries on the scale that it has to Greece, Ireland, and Portugal. I hope in our discussion today the Secretary will shed light on what we can expect the administration to pose on a long-term plan that will prevent the United States from being on the road to becoming the next Greece. Mr. Secretary, I look forward to your testimony. I will yield back the balance of my time.